Okay, hello, good evening, everyone. We are going to get started. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight to join us, and welcome to tonight's Connecticut's Kid Governor session on running the program in a blended and virtual environment. My name is Brian Cofrancesco, and I'm the head of the Connecticut's Kid Governor program at the Connecticut Democracy Center at Connecticut's Old State House. And we're really happy to have you here with us today, those who are with us live and those who will watch us on YouTube in the coming weeks. I want to start by asking my two colleagues from the Connecticut's Kid Governor program who are here with us today to introduce themselves, so you can put some faces to names, and you'll also be hearing from them in a little bit. So Samantha and Jacob.
My name is Jacob Orca, and I'm one of the Kid Governor assistants.
I'm Samantha Gorski. I'm one of the Kid Governor assistants and the social media manager.
Excellent. And as I mentioned earlier, the three of us work for the Connecticut Democracy Center at Connecticut's Old State House. And our mission is providing people with a lifetime pathway to civic engagement and the tools to take informed action. And so those of you who are familiar with the Kid Governor program know that that's very much in line with what we do with Kid Governor. We also run some other programs you may be familiar with, including the field trips and tours and public programming at the historic Old State House. We also run the Connecticut History Day program for middle and high schoolers. And our organization runs the Connecticut Network, which is a TV station that provides gavel-to-gavel coverage of the General Assembly and our state government. So we do a lot to connect historic and contemporary state government and really use it to inspire citizens to be active and engaged in their communities and our state. But today we are here to talk all about Connecticut's Kid Governor. I want to thank our two partners on this workshop series, the State Department of Education and the Connecticut Council for the Social Studies, as well as Connecticut Humanities and the Galicki Family Foundation, who provide both funding and partnership support that help make the program possible and this workshop series as well. If you are new to Zoom, which I'm imagining most are not, and are very well adapted to this platform, the microphone is in the bottom left to mute and unmute yourself. We're asking that you keep yourself muted for now so that as we go through the program, it'll keep everybody focused on who's speaking. And you can drop any questions that come up during our presentation right in the chat box where Samantha just posted, and you probably got a little alert. But when we get to the end, if anybody does want to unmute themselves to ask a question aloud, we welcome that as well. And I do want to start by saying, I know this has been and will be a very difficult couple of weeks for teachers as the state and districts work to find out and determine how they're going to move forward. And I just want you to know that our team is following everything really closely, and we are here to provide support as you work to implement Kid Governor and do what we can. We appreciate you bringing this important program to your students amidst everything that's going on. But we really think that now more than ever, lessons on civics and how elections and voting work are especially important to students. So just know we're here, we're thinking of you, and if there's anything that we can do to help or support you, to reach out and let us know. So with that, we are going to jump in on today's workshop. So our workshop for today is running Kid Governor in a blended or virtual classroom environment, and I'll be speaking as well as my colleagues that you met, Samantha and Jacob. The goals for today's workshop include I'll give you an overview of our approach to creating virtual resources for you for this fall. We'll also provide you an overview of the resources that we will have available and how we will be sharing them with you. We'll provide ideas for generating student excitement virtually. We'll give you a tour of the Google Shared Drive, which is how we are going to be disseminating new resources out to teachers to make them easy to implement. We have two educators with us tonight who will be giving you some insights into how they teach the program and how it can be adapted, or ways that they have in mind for adapting it for the virtual environment. And then we'll have question and answer at the end. And start to finish, we should be done right around 5:15. You'll hear from them in a little bit, but I just wanted to give a brief introduction to our two educators who are participating today. Elaine Temel from West Vine Street School in Stonington. And we have Lisa Thomas, who's a gifted education specialist at Clover Street School in Windsor. And you'll hear from them later on in tonight's webinar. So I'm going to jump right in. There's a lot that you're going to see on your screen, but please don't worry, this is being recorded and it will be posted onto YouTube and shared on social media. We will also make the slides available, so if you need to recap or want to go through at a slower pace, you will have that ability to do so. So our approach in creating new resources. We've been working on a plan for this since the spring, knowing that there was a good chance that this program would not run and schools would not necessarily reopen in their traditional formats. So we've been thinking a lot about how we wanted to move forward with this. So our #1 goal has been to support you as the teachers and as the practitioners of this program. And please keep that in mind throughout all of this, is that you are the ones who make this program happen, and we are here to help do what we can to support you in that. We wanted to ensure that the program was exciting for students and that the tools we create and share keep that excitement going for students, even if they're not meeting in person. We also wanted to create special experiences for students, things that were unique to the Kid Governor program and that students might not get otherwise, while also making sure that what we provide to you allows you to be flexible and have multiple options as to how you want to teach the program, depending on if your district is in person, hybrid, all virtual, if that's where things go. We wanted to make sure that the resources could adapt to that. We've had several meetings with educators, some of you on the phone with us this evening, or in the Zoom meeting, I should say. And one thing that we kept hearing is that video content is especially compelling for students, and that underscored really what we believe and what we use in building the program. That's why students make campaign videos and using the technology that's out there and how kids interact. So thinking through what video content we could provide, and also keeping in mind it would be useful to students who might struggle with reading. So how video content can be used for that. Again, adaptability, especially if you need to transition between virtual or in-person teaching. And along those lines, keeping in mind tools that could be used for synchronous learning and or asynchronous learning. So, and we've been following, as I said, what the state's been putting out, what we've been hearing nationally, going to webinars, to professional development, and reading so many district reopening plans. So we're really keeping in mind what you're up against and what you're working with as schools reopen. So to jump right in, first of all, those of you who've participated in the program before are familiar with our toolkits. And those are our collection of lesson plans that will guide you through the entire program. They include a lesson plan, they include worksheets, they include answer keys, they include connections to curriculum. It's all in one document. Those are, as you may be familiar, designed for in-person instruction. So we published these in the spring because we really wanted to make sure you had those resources available, but also knowing that we might need to create something new come this fall. So those are available on our website. The two different versions being if your school or your class is going to nominate a student from your school and vote in the election, or just vote in the election. Those are available on our website, ct.kidgovernor.org. And the program will still follow the lesson sequence that's in there, lessons 1 through 15, or 1 through 7 if you were just voting. But what we are doing is we've broken down the PDFs into smaller PDFs. So as you'll see in a little bit when Jacob gives you a tour of the Google Drive, by lesson, you can get one PDF with the lesson plan, one PDF with if there's any content or educational materials, one PDF that has the worksheets. So if you need to grab and go and print quickly, or if you need to email students one portion, you don't have to figure out how to divide up the toolkit. We've done that for you. So it's all in one place. And then after talking to lots of teachers over the last few weeks and doing research and going to webinars, we have found that many, though we understand not all, school districts are making use of Google Classrooms. And if not Google Classrooms, we know that many teachers use Google or Google Drive in their own personal lives. So what we are doing is creating Google-based resources for you to teach these lessons. So as you'll see in a couple minutes with Jacob, we have a Google form for every single lesson. So they will walk your students through the content, and then there are questions, and then they can submit it, and those will go right to you, and we'll go over how that works. It's not anything that would get submitted to us, but there is a Google form option. You can see a screenshot right here of the first lesson on introducing Connecticut's 3 branches of state government, where we have the information right in there that you would normally find in the toolkits. So students, if you would like to go with that option, can learn it on their own. We've also created a Google Slides version of every worksheet that is in the toolkit. And so by that, I mean we've taken screenshots of the worksheets themselves, made them into a Google slide presentation, and added in colored text boxes so that students can answer their questions right in Google Slides. So if you are making use of Google Classroom, you can then assign that slide presentation as an assignment to your students. They can complete it and return it to you. That way you don't have to worry about if you have paper assignments or what have you. That's another option in addition to the Google Forms. If you are not a school that's using Google Classroom, you can download those slides and still share them out as PowerPoint files to your students. You'll hear in a little bit from Samantha, who's been working on Bitmoji Classrooms for 3 of our lessons. So if you are not familiar, it is more of a gamified approach to teaching where you have Bitmojis and characters who are helping students explore different presentations. And we have 3 of those that will be coming in the next few weeks for students to do some asynchronous learning of specific lessons. By the same token, if you would prefer to lead a virtual class, or if you're teaching in person with some students, for some of the lessons that are more content focused, we will have Google Slides presentations with the information so that you can relay it to your students yourself and click through on a shared screen in a Google Meet, if you're using Zoom, or even if you have it pulled up on a smart board or something in your classroom. We're also creating some resources in Google Sheets, very basic resources, nothing with formulas and all of that, but opportunities for you to do something a little different, connecting in the lessons and getting students to be more engaged with those lessons. So in the end, there are at least 2 options for modifying most of the lessons that are in the toolkit, depending on how you would like to present them to your students. We are also working to create, as I mentioned, video resources or video-based resources. So in the coming weeks, we will be sharing a brief video introduction from our staff for every single lesson in the toolkits. And that will be a student-facing video that will introduce your students to what they will be learning in that lesson. And so that's an additional resource for you to use with your students if you would like to give them another face to explain what they're going to be learning in an activity. We are also working to get videos from elected officials explaining their branch of state government. So these videos in particular will be for lesson 1 on the 3 branches of state government, and will be as either another option instead of the reading portion of that lesson, or in addition to. And I am happy to say this isn't her particular video for this. This is her video for something else, but Lieutenant Governor Bysowitz, who you see on the screen, will be recording a video about the executive branch. And we're working with some other folks to create a video about the legislative branch and a video about the judicial branch. And I should say that the videos that we're putting out are designed to be digestible. So we're keeping them in the 2 or 3 minute range. These aren't going to be 10 or 15 minute long videos for your students to get through. It's something bite-sized that will really help teach them the content, but also keep their attention. We are also making use of Flipgrid this year after hearing from a few teachers who found some good success with it. If you're not familiar, Flipgrid is a platform that lets students reply to questions or share their responses using video. And it is a platform that has been approved, and they've signed the Connecticut Education Technology Privacy Agreement, so they are okay to use if you don't already use it in your district. And we will have a reflection question, or they call it a topic, for every lesson in the toolkit. So as you go through, if you are having your students learn on their own, or if you are doing synchronous teaching, you can send them a link to the Flipgrid where they can answer a reflection question or a prompt after each lesson or after a few lessons, depending on how you want to do it. And our team will be putting together what's called a grid of these topics for the program, and you will be able to copy them and share them with your students so that you get their responses rather than them coming to us. I'm not going to go through a full explanation of how Flipgrid works. We're happy to talk with you about that if you have questions, but I did just want to show you quickly a Flipgrid that the State Department of Education put together for their Social Studies Challenge. And some of you may recognize this young lady, and her teacher is on the webinar tonight. This is Elaine Tipton, our first Kid Governor. And this summer, Elena put together a series of videos, actually say in the spring, for students about how they could show kindness while being socially distant. So as part of the state's Social Studies Challenge, they used one of her videos and they put in a prompt to students on Flipgrid, asking them other ways that they can show kindness towards others. And as you can see, a student would be sent to a page like this, and it would be about the Kid Governor program and about what they're learning. And then they click the video button and they're able to record their response to that prompt. So it gives it, again, we're going with video options for students, and it's something that changes it up a little bit from writing or typing and writing out their reflections. And those would be ways for you to collect their feedback and really see what they're retaining. So that's Flipgrid. And our last thing, and I don't have full details to share yet, but we are working to see if there is a way for us to provide webinars by our staff for your students, where we would be able to take on teaching a lesson or two throughout the 15 lesson sequence to make it a little bit easier on your end and give students a 15 or 20-minute video they could watch, which would convey what you would normally teach. So we are working through finding platforms that would work for that, making sure that we stay within student privacy and make sure students can access it. So that's something we'll have a little bit more information on coming in September. So one thing which is going to be very important this fall is really generating student excitement. And I know I speak for Jacob and Sam. We've been able to visit classrooms at all phases of their participation in Kid Governor. And one of the most rewarding parts is that we can see the excitement that these kids have for the program, about voting, about coming up with campaign issues, about having their voices heard. So student excitement is going to be really critical. So we're coming up with ways that we can help you do that. And if you have ideas, by all means, please reach out and let us know. We will be providing virtual backgrounds for you. Excuse me. If you are teaching on a platform like Zoom or have the capability to put up a virtual background, we will have ones like this that show the Kid Governor logo that you can use. And we're also working on getting some virtual backgrounds of the Kid Governor's office here at the Old State House. So those are things that you can keep an eye out for. One recommendation, and you can see along the side of our screen, are some of the voting posters that we've seen in schools around Connecticut that they will sometimes hang during the election season. And we really felt it's an opportunity either for you or for your students to create voting and campaign posters. And if you're doing synchronous learning, to hang them in your background or have them on your screen, balloons, things like that, to really build the spirit of this election season and the Kid Governor program itself. Our staff does want to offer, if you are doing virtual learning or if there is another way for us to connect with your class, we would be happy to visit your classroom virtually over the course of this fall. So if it would be at all useful for us to pop in and say hello or answer any questions, please consider reaching out to us. We'd be honored to pay a visit to classrooms around Connecticut. And another idea, just as you're thinking through running the program, to consider holding a virtual grade-wide or school-wide rally when the time comes, where you could have all your students on Zoom or on Google Meet to either have your school's nominees give their speeches before students vote on who will be your school's official nominee to the statewide election, Or if you want to show all the videos, you'll be able to watch them obviously online. There are opportunities and ways that you can share them and have all students watch them together, which might give a sense of excitement and togetherness as students are watching the videos, which is really key to getting the students pumped about watching and eventually voting. So these are just a couple quick ideas that we've come up with, and we're working on some more. So if you have ideas, please send us an email. We really want to help you convey the spirit of the election this fall. So how will all of this be shared? We've been trying to think of ways to most effectively and in a most streamlined way provide all of these materials to you. So we are creating a Google shared drive. And what that means is that we've created a separate Google Drive just for this year's Connecticut's Kid Governor program. And we are going to be adding each registered teacher to that drive. And Jacob is going to give an explanation of how exactly that shared drive works and how you can make use of the materials in it. We will be posting a document that is sort of an addendum to the toolkits, and it'll explain what resources are available lesson by lesson. And we also have organized everything into folders by lesson. So as you go through and say you're teaching lesson 2 today, you can go into the lesson 2 folder and you can find PDF copies of resources, any PowerPoints we might have, it'll all be in one spot. And what that'll enable you to do is to copy those resources to your own drive. And if you are a Google Classroom district, you can then put them out as assignments to your students. We will not have any access to the student information. The reason we chose to use a Google Shared Drive is that when you go to access the document, it forces you to make a copy of it. And that is what will allow you to move it into your classroom. So every teacher can make a copy across the state and share it directly with their students so that you can collect all of their responses as assignments or to grade or what have you. And Jacob will show you these in a moment, but for the Google Forms we've created, if you're not familiar with Google Forms as a platform, you can actually convert forms into quizzes. So if you were looking to convert what's in there in order to be able to grade your students, look into the quizzes function and how you can change the settings so that you can actually grade your students based on what they're turning into you. And the way we've set up the forms is that they will collect student email addresses, and then students will receive copies of their own work. So you will, as well as the students. So that was a marathon run through what we are pulling together for you for this fall. So I'm going to turn it over to Jacob, who is going to give you a tour of the shared Google Drive folder that we'll be sending out in the next couple of weeks.
All right, thank you, Brian. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so the screen I just brought up is what the Google Drive looks like from my end. It's going to look very similar from your end as well. Right now, it's just going to give me some additional editing permissions that, as Brian was alluding to, you'll have to make a copy of the documents to do some of the edits that you're going to see are possible from my end. But as you'll see from looking at this shared drive folder, we have folders for both nominating and voting classes and voting only classes. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the nominating and voting classes. And you'll see that within that folder, we have individual folders for each lesson that we have in our Kid Governor Toolkit. So all 15 lessons are listed here with their individual folders. So I'm going to go ahead and open up lesson number 2 here first. And under lesson number 2, you can see that each lesson has all these different types of resources that are going to be available. So we've got a folder for the PDF versions of the worksheets, a folder for the Google Forms version, another folder for the Google Slides version, a fourth folder for the Bitmoji Classroom, which some of the lessons are going to have, and then a fifth folder that's going to have additional activities and resources. So Brian had talked a little bit about Flipgrid earlier. We're thinking we might be able to get a link to Flipgrid in there. And we're working on other kind of video content and resources that will likely go into that folder. So what I'm going to do first is I'll open up the PDF version folder so we can take a look at what those are going to look like on your end. And you'll see that each page of the worksheet that applies to that lesson is in here, and it's labeled with the page number first. And that'll just make it so that the lesson sheets are in the correct order. And it also makes it easier if you have the PDF version or a printed out version of the full toolkit. You can easily reference back and forth between the worksheets here and the full toolkit with the page numbers. So you'll see that you have kind of the lesson plan here, the outline of the lesson, the worksheets that are included. So here we have a diagram that you can share with your students via email or through Google Classroom. You can print it out if you're in the classroom. So it just kind of makes it easier to break these things down into smaller bits. And then kind of the actual worksheets in here as well. So that's what the PDFs will look like. And again, they're broken down into these small pieces to make them a little bit easier to share, especially in a virtual environment. So heading back into the lesson number 2 folder here, I'm now going to open up the Google Forms version of the worksheets. And when I open it on my end, you'll see that I can edit these questions a little bit. And once you've made a copy of it, and I'll show you how to make a copy in just a minute, you can also edit the forms so that they make sense for your classroom. So you'll see, again, we have everything in here that we have kind of in the toolkits and in the PDF versions. So you'll get the diagrams here and questions that students can fill out. So we've got multiple choice style questions here. This makes it easy to share it with your students and for them to fill it out in a way that I think everybody is pretty familiar with at this point, this kind of online form survey style where it's pretty intuitive. And so like I said, if you decided you wanted to edit this, like let's say you didn't want to offer the exit ticket, it's easy enough to edit it from your end. You can just go in here, delete the section, and then your students wouldn't get that question. So it allows you to modify it a little bit for your students and what works best for your classroom. And while I'm in the editing side of this, Brian had talked about making it into a quiz. And I think that's a really kind of cool tool that I'm sure you're all very familiar with already at this point. But if you did want to turn these forms into a quiz, you just go up to the settings icon up here. And you'll see that all the way to the right here, there's a quizzes button. And then you can just click make this a quiz. You have to make sure you hit save up here. I've forgotten to do that before. So you hit save. And then it allows you to kind of modify the questions again so that you can set correct answers. So for example, our first question here is the governor has plans for the state, but needs to tell the citizens about the plans. What can the governor do? So you would click on the question to edit it, click answer key, and then I can say that if the governor wants to communicate plans to the state, he would do that by delivering a speech to citizens. So when you click done, it now registers this as the correct answer to this question. So again, I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with quizzes at this point, but it's just a quick overview of how the quizzes function works here. So I'm gonna hop back out to the lesson 2 folder. I'm going to go on to the next folder here, and I'll come back to how to make a copy to your personal drive a little bit later. The third folder is the Google Slides version of worksheets. And I think for some teachers, this is going to be what you might prefer, because this really brings in the kind of aesthetic value of a worksheet. I'll show you what I mean here, where I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. So it'll bring up the worksheet in a fillable format. So you'll be able to see the question here. The governor has plans for the state, but needs to tell the citizens about the plans. What can the governor do? And students will be able to fill in their answers right into this text box here. So where it says type here, the governor can give a speech. So they can just fill out the answers right here. And as Brian said, if you assign this to your students through Google Classrooms, you'll get a copy of their responses as they're working on it. So go ahead and undo that so I don't forget to do that later. And once again, kind of hopping back out here to the lessons. I'm not going to open the Bitmoji Classroom one yet because Samantha is going to get into that after I'm done. So I won't steal her thunder by giving a preview of that. And right now we don't have anything in the additional activities and resources folder, but we'll be moving stuff into there soon. So that gives you a sense of the overview of just the structure of these folders. And as I said, I want to make sure that I show how to copy these to your shared drive. So, or to your personal drive rather. So in a few weeks, probably early to mid-September, we'll be sharing out these Google Drives to teachers so that you can have access to all these materials. And once you do that in your drive, I'm going to go to my personal drive here for a second. I've already given myself access to it. You can click on Shared Drives over here on the left. And you'll see that I have access to this Connecticut's Kid Governor 2020-21 Toolkits and Resources. So go ahead and open that. And again, it's the same file structure. So you'll be seeing what I was just showing you before, except that when you get to your first form here, or any of the documents for that matter, if I try to open this up, it gets stubborn and tries to open it as my other drive here sometimes. So I'm going to switch this back to my personal drive. Okay, so you'll see that when you open it on your end, it does not give you the option to edit any of the questions. It kind of shows you in presentation view. And that's because we're trying to encourage people to create copies of this document so that we're not receiving private student information. So you've got to make a copy of it to share with your students. So what you do instead of just opening it up directly is you would right click on the file here. It's going to give you the option down here to make a copy. And as soon as you click that, you'll see down here it says it's creating the copy. And then you can click on that link and it'll show you in your personal drive where it is. So it's now created a copy of lesson number 2. It's in my personal drive. And now when I go to open it, it shows that I can edit it. So again, you'll have editing permission so you can take questions out, add questions in, and share it with your students. So that's just kind of an overview of how to make copies of these documents so that you can share it out with your students. I believe that was all I had on this. I'm happy to answer questions when we get to the question and answer section at the end. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Samantha. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen first. And then I'm going to hand it over to Samantha to talk about Bitmoji Classrooms.
All right, so with the Bitmoji Classrooms, we were kind of inspired by seeing the work that teachers from not only Connecticut, but across the country, what they were doing to kind of make their classrooms a little more relatable for their students while they're at home, to make it a little bit more of a game in some cases. So we've created, and we're still working on, the Bitmoji Classrooms for lessons 1, 2, and 3. Where's the screen? There we go. So we'll be, there you go. So we'll have Myra, the current Kid Governor, introduces each lesson. So she has her own Bitmoji here for the students to kind of interact with. We each have one for myself, Jacob, and Brian. So we'll be the ones teaching lessons through the Bitmoji Classrooms, and each object in the classroom itself is interactive. So the books here will take you to the Kid Governor Library. So there's books that we recommend for students on civics. If you click on the flag, you get some information about the state of Connecticut so they can learn more about our state and the different state facts that they might be interested in. And then using some of the parts of the lessons I'm teaching, everything's interactive and follows along with the lesson plan pretty spot on. So we have the executive branch here from lesson 1. So you can go through and, oh, apparently I didn't link this one, but you'd be able to click on Governor Ned Lamont there, and it would take you to a little fact sheet about Ned Lamont and what his role is as the governor. And same thing with the rest of the executive branch here. Go. So you'd click through it and give you that information, and the students can interact with this as well to go to his official biography on the state website. So they get all that information plus a little bit more that isn't necessarily always included in the lesson plans. From there, we also have some of the stuff that we've turned into worksheets. So how to run for governor from lesson 2. The kids for this activity in the Bitmoji can go through and actually play a game where it's almost like a choose your own adventure to figure out how to run for governor. So they'd start and they'd have to pick which option they want. So let's say they don't have support of their family, they end their run, but they can go try again. And it goes through all the way to winning the election. And the kids do have the option to win or lose depending on where they click. So they get a little bit of everything there. So you can see all the options there. And then we also have a version of our Hall of Kid Governors that's located here at Connecticut's Old State House that students can interact with. So again, you see myself, Brian, and Jacob, and all of the portraits are interactive, so the students can go through and click on each portrait to learn more about that kid governor. So I clicked on Megan's portrait, and it takes us to the 2018 Kid Governor. So we've tried to make this as fun and engaging for students so that they can click through and have fun with the lessons and still learn about what to do. There's also options in some of the Bitmoji Classrooms to go through and do a quick game version of a review from the previous lesson. And we're interested to see what you guys have to say about these once we release them. All right.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much, Jacob and Samantha. And while we have a group watching us, I do want to publicly thank the two of them who have used, I've been reading your comments. Our team's been working all summer very, very hard, especially these two, to help make these all happen. So we hope that they are useful to you. And if you have ideas, please let us know. We're still developing things, and even if it's not something we can pull together for this year, it's something we can continue and think about for future years. So thank you both for all you're doing. Okay, so right now we're going to move into our section on the educator's perspective, and I'd like to introduce two of our educators who are going to share their perspectives on not only the program and how they've implemented it in the past, but how that can, their ideas for how that might be done in this new learning environment. So I'm going to introduce both of them, and then we're going to have Lisa speak first, and then Elaine. And Lisa has to go, but if you have questions for her, you can drop them in the chat, and if she isn't here to read them, we will get them along to her. So I'd like to introduce the two of them. Lisa, as I mentioned, is a gifted education specialist at Clover Street School in Windsor. She's been teaching for 35 years, and this will be her school's 5th year participating in the Kid Governor program. And she's going to be talking about her work to connect her students with elected officials to inspire them to run for office and how that could be adapted for virtual or hybrid learning. Elaine Temel is a 5th grade teacher at West Vine Street School in Stonington. She's been working in education for 13 years, and this will be her 3rd year participating in the Kid Governor program. And she'll be talking to us in particular about Flipgrid and possibly some other topics. They are both really passionate educators and great supporters of our program, and we are honored to have them here with us tonight. So I will pass it off to Lisa. Oh, I think you're on mute. There you go.
How about now?
You're good. Thank you.
It's our favorite new phrase, unmute yourself. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be with all of you. The Kid Governor program is a really, really wonderful program. And I need to say up front, I'm not the one in my building who coordinates it. That's really run by our 5th grade team. And I provide support as our, not just our gifted education specialist, but I do a lot of school-wide enrichment. So when our building started getting involved in the Kid Governor program, I really wanted to support it for a number of reasons. First and foremost is because I believe in democracy, and I believe in everybody having a voice and children learning very early on that they have a voice that matters. However, in the background of all that, I have also been serving in elected office for 11 years now. I'm in my 6th term on the Coventry Town Council, and I'm currently running for the state Senate. So having spent that much time involved in local and state elections and politics, I've had the opportunity to form a lot of relationships with legislators. But I just want to say right from the beginning, you don't need those relationships to do the kinds of things that I did, because our legislators really want to be available and they love coming into our schools. What I have been doing in my school building is I try to bring in some of our legislators at the end of 4th grade to talk to our 4th graders about being a candidate and things for them to think about over the summer before they come back in the fall. I asked them to talk to the 4th graders about how you develop a platform. What are you going to talk about when you come back to school as a 5th grader? Because as a candidate, the first thing we need to do is be able to tell our story and think about what our message is going to be. So I already spent 5 hours today walking around Eastern Connecticut with my luck card and telling my story. And my story is based on safety, security, and sustainability for Eastern Connecticut and the state, and a lot of conversations about reopening schools, a lot of conversations in my district about agriculture and food distribution. But you have to have a story to tell. So when people come in to visit our kids at the end of 4th grade, that's what they're focusing on. How do you tell your story so that people will want to vote for you? Then when they come back in 5th grade, we ask legislators to come back again at the beginning of the 5th grade year. Then they talk to the kids about what specifically is your platform going to be, and how will you know the most important issue for your constituents, which of course is your classmates. So we talk to them about asking their classmates, what matters to you? What concerns you? What do you think we kids should be thinking about, either for right here in our school or for our community around us? And it's, you know, it's really great for the kids. And one thing that is important to me, and I'm going to try to share some pictures. Let's see if this will work for me. Ugh. There it comes. We have a very diverse population of students. So it's very important for them to see themselves in the people we invite. So hopefully this is up and you're seeing it. This, the person standing up is our state treasurer, Sean Wooden. Sitting down is one of our local state representatives. I teach in Windsor, so that's State Representative Jane Garibay. So she has an extra vested interest in our schools because she represents them. She represents the town of Windsor. Just going to bring up another picture for you as well. Maybe. Give me one more try. It was much easier last time. Okay. And this is State Representative Brandon McGee, who also represents part of Windsor. So again, our kids are able to see themselves. They see two men in front of them. They see a woman in front of them. They see two men of color in front of them. So I would strongly encourage you, if you're going to invite people to come in to talk to your students about their role as candidates, as elected officials, to think about who it is they're seeing in front of them, and bring in a good mix. We have lots of people, but start with your own districts where you live, because those are the people who care. And of course, there's an ulterior motive, which is if we bring our legislators into our school buildings, they're going to understand our schools, they're going to feel like they have a stake in our schools, and hopefully they'll be even stronger advocates for our schools. So in the end of 4th grade, we're asking these legislators, statewide officials to come in and talk about how do you tell your story so people want to vote for you. And then in the fall, we have them come in and talk about building your platform. How do you listen to other people so that you can decide what you're going to talk about? Because ultimately our kid governor candidates need to talk about a particular issue and convince their constituents that they should be elected so they can represent that issue. And all of this, of course, lends itself really well to a virtual learning environment because all of us are doing all our campaigning on Zoom right now. We're holding panels, we're holding meet and greets. Some of us are out knocking on doors, which is the most important thing to do. We're making phone calls, but being on Zoom type platforms are really where everything's happening, even our national nominating conventions. So, and it also makes it even easier, I think, to invite these people into our virtual classrooms because it's easier for them to plug into their schedules. They don't have to travel. So I really encourage everyone to think about doing this. It shows our children how to communicate with an audience. It shows them what real people doing the job look like. And it really kind of gets them excited. It's really exciting to hear your state representative or your state senator or the treasurer for the whole state of Connecticut say to you, you can do this, you're important, and your voice matters. And each of them, as when they came to speak, spoke about something specifically important to them. And what was kind of nice about having Treasurer Wooden come is he talked about his work on the Connecticut Higher Education Trust College Savings Program, which of course is another thing that our 5th graders need to be hearing about and thinking about. So there are lots of things you can tie into these now virtual events when you invite these folks in to meet with you. So that's everything that I would want to tell you right now, but if there are questions in the chat, I can address them, or if any of you from the Kid Governor program want me to elaborate on anything else, I'm more than happy to.
I think that was great. Thank you so much, Lisa. And I think, a couple points. One is you said, I can remember the exact day when I was in kindergarten and the governor came to visit our school. Have that picture sitting there on the floor and how, what an impact that can make when kids get to come face to face with their elected officials at such a young age. And to the point that, it makes it a lot easier that this is all virtual. You don't have to worry about scheduling time. I mean, it is still tricky to schedule timing and all that, but it makes it a lot easier that you can connect quite easily. So thank you for what you're doing.
It absolutely does. And you're welcome. I would just suggest if you're going to try to get your state rep or state senator in, do it before January when everybody goes back into session, because then you'll never get your hands on them during the school day. So do it early. And then, later on towards the end of the year, you can get other people back in again if you want to. But I think the other thing I wanted to say when you share your story about the governor coming in when you were a kid, it humanizes the kids' legislators. It takes away the mystique and it helps them to understand that these are real human beings who have real things they care about. And all kinds of people can be those elected officials. It's, so they can aspire to that too.
Absolutely. And the other thing I think that I really wanted to stress too about what you said is the importance of breaking it in 4th grade and introducing the idea of kid governor before the students have even gotten into 5th grade. And that's something we've been talking to some teachers about this summer, ways to get the students excited before that 5th grade year starts. And this is a great way to do it. I mean, you can teach lessons, you can bring the Kid Governor traveling exhibit, and you can even think about bringing in folks to talk to them and, as you said, humanize them before the process even starts.
Exactly. It's a great program. Thank you. And what you've done to make this virtual and accessible is amazing. You've done a lot of work.
Thank you. And thanks for all you do. We really, really appreciate it. All right. And now we'll hear from Elaine.
Really nice to hear you, Lisa. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Brian for inviting me to speak here. And thanks to Samantha and Jacob for all their extraordinarily hard work. Those are some amazing resources. Um, as Brian mentioned at the beginning, my name is Elaine Temel. I teach 5th grade English Language Arts and Social Studies at West Vine Street School in Pawcatuck, which is part of the Stonington Public Schools District. And I also want to thank any teacher who's here today listening live, and those also who listen later on, because I know how challenging these times are trying to get back to school this fall. So this will be my 3rd year participating in Connecticut's Kid Governor. The first year that I participated, my classes were a voting only class because I was a little nervous about jumping into the program completely when I knew little about it. Although looking back, I really wish we had put a candidate for the first year, because I was pleasantly surprised at how easy the program was to facilitate as a teacher, how enthusiastic my students were, and how meaningful the whole experience it was for everyone involved. So, however, coming on as a voting only class is a really nice way to gain some familiarity with the program, especially this fall when things are a little more challenging. And not only can you vote in the election and analyze videos, but you can make connections to your language arts standards, to your social studies standards. And what I did in the first year was also host the traveling exhibit, which was phenomenal and so motivating for my students to see. So the second year I participated in the program, my entire 5th grade at West Vine participated. We had a primary where we had 11 candidates who created their 3-point platforms and gave speeches in front of the 5th grade, and we voted. And we put forth one candidate, Kylie, to the statewide committee where 7 possible candidates are put forward and then voted on by each 5th grader whose class is registered across the state of Connecticut. And we were absolutely thrilled. Our candidate, Kylie, did not win the election, but she became a member of the candidate, which honestly was cabinet, which honestly was just as great, because she attended the inauguration event with me, with my administrator, with the whole team of kids that really supported her. And it was an amazing experience to meet so many other Connecticut 5th graders and teachers and elected officials, and to be a part of that incredible event. We were really pleased with her work, and how after she kindly became part of the cabinet, the whole team of kids who had supported her in creating her campaign video continued to support her and work with her, you know, at recess and after school and at night, so she could continue to work on her platform, which got a little derailed because of COVID, but we made some adjustments, so it all worked out. I am a huge supporter of this program. My students have learned a great deal and been very enthusiastic, and it started out just me, but I got some other educators on board and administration on board, so things were growing and changing. This year I will be rolling things out virtually, so this particular webinar is extremely valuable. If I have class time, which is still a little bit to be determined, I'll do that as well. Obviously, Brian and his team, Samantha and Jacob, have been working so hard. I was floored at the resources that have been put together already, and I know more to come, and how creative they have been and how well organized they have been. But I'd also like to give my perspective from the other side, just being an educator. So a few comments about Connecticut Kid Governor as a whole program. Again, it's easy to follow. Lessons are standard based. They're ready to go. I would suggest watching yesterday's webinar if you didn't see it, and if you're new to the program, I think you'll get a great overview there. I'd also suggest spending some time checking out the website and the resources that are available before you get going. And that will give you some great information and resources to use, and the new distance ones as well. Next, I'd like to speak about, in addition to what we saw today using Flipgrid, as Brian had mentioned earlier, this is a tool that I used for the first time this spring when my classes very quickly moved to distance learning. I am not a particularly techie person, so I was looking for something simple for me to understand and use, and simple for the kids, and Flipgrid was a great tool for that. And my kids really loved it. It's a lot of fun. Flipgrid, as you heard earlier, it's an online tool that links directly to Google Classroom, which was really valuable for me. And it's a means for students to respond in a short video presentation. Now, Flipgrid can be used for a variety of applications in the classroom. You can use it as a tool for discussions. Students can give presentations, respond to your questions, and I know there will be a series of questions to go with each Kid Governor lesson, so you can use it in that way. Students can share ideas with classmates. They can demonstrate their learning. Students can use Flipgrid to make a really creative response and make connections between what they're learning in class, what they read on their own, and what's happening in their own community, in their own lives. From a teaching perspective, I really like Flipgrid because I can load the assignment and then students can access it from a computer or from a tablet or a mobile device at any time that is convenient for them. It's also free for teachers, free for students, which is a huge bonus, and it is an approved platform in the state of Connecticut, so that's helpful. Teachers can make your own assignments there. You could use the Kid Governor assignments. There's also a library of assignments that are pre-created that you can use. So if you do choose to use Flipgrid and use the lessons that are created by Connecticut Kid Governor, you can also control how your students respond, which is very valuable from a teaching perspective. If you have a concern that a student may just get silly, too silly, or do something inappropriate, you can moderate their responses where no one else sees them until you approve them, which I found to be helpful this spring. You can also control the length of a student's response. If you want like a super quick share, you can make the available time as little as 15 seconds. If you want the students to give a more thoughtful presentation or response, you can stretch it out to as much as 5 minutes. So that's another nice feature. Students can respond to each other. They can log on, see students' presentation or response or comments, and then the student can click like, or they can give a written response. They just type into a box, or they can give a video response like, hey, Sam, I really agree with the point you made in your last flip. I, also found that to be true in my experience because, and that's a nice way for students to have some dialogue, even if they're not logged in at the same exact time. And also from a teaching perspective, you can, like I said, moderate responses so they are not visible to all before you, you approve them, but you can also respond to students in writing as a video or create a rubric to grade your students' response, which I think is really great for data and information for teachers. So there's several tutorials online for teachers to better understand how to use Flipgrid, but I really would stress that it's very user-friendly even for a non-tech savvy kind of teachers. I really encourage you to check out Flipgrid, to check out Connecticut Kid Governor, to look at the resources that are being created, and to bring this to your classrooms. My experience has been nothing but positive. My kids went way above and beyond what I expected them to do. I had students researching at night on topics and finding information from their family, from their community, online, making posters around the school, and really the enthusiasm for the program lasted beyond our celebration of Kylie's work. And it was just a wonderful experience, which I think is even more important and exciting in a presidential election year. So I want to wish everyone the best of luck in their return to school this fall. I will put my email in the chat if anyone would like to hear anything more about my experience, and I'm also happy to answer any questions, and I wish you the best of luck back to school.
Thank you so much, Elaine. it's great to hear all of your experience and how excited your kids get about this program. It really means a lot for us to hear those stories and anecdotes from in the classroom that we don't always get to see. We now have finished our presentation portion, but we'd love to open it up to any questions that you are welcome to drop in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourselves. We'd love to have you ask your question directly either of Elaine if you want to ask about something she's doing or what she's been doing with Flipgrid or in her school, or for any of us about the program itself and how it would work this fall. And I do know also that Samantha has been tracking questions that have been pre-submitted before today's workshop, so she may also be chiming in with some of those from time to time.
So while everyone's quiet, I'll go in with the first pre-submitted question, which is probably one of the most important. How is voting going to work this year?
Excellent. Jacob, do you want to answer this question? Would you like me to?
Sure, I can chime in on this. So one of the lesson plans, I think it's the last one, is essentially going to be a Google Forms ballot that can be shared with your students so that they can vote within your class, and then you'll get the results of your class's election. Sorry, my Google phone thought I was talking to it. So you would get the results from your student's election, and then you would, just as normal, for those who are familiar with the program, submit your votes to us through a Google document that we would share with you. So in terms of getting us the votes, it's going to be the normal process, but we'll also be providing a Google Forms ballot that you can use in your classrooms.
All right, we've got a question from Carol about registering for classes for participation.
Hi guys, thank you for everything today. It was really, really helpful. And I second or third or fourth, the applause for all of your hard work. As always, you guys are doing an incredible job. So I have a quick question. At least for our district, we're doing, parents have the option to go hybrid. Option doing homeschool, participating remotely, and or sending our kids to school, but they also have the option to change that at any time that it doesn't work for them. So I just had a quick question about, like as of today, I don't even have a class list yet to register my class. And it's not likely that I'm gonna have that before the end of next week, and it could change almost on a daily basis. So let's say, for example, I end up registering, if I have 15 children in my classroom, and then my numbers change post that cutoff date, how will that work?
That's a great question. And I will give you an answer, and I can tell you if as things change, we are going to be adapting on our end too. So this is really helpful for us to hear the realities of what are going on, because that helps us know where we need to bend, where we need to sway, and where we need to come up with something completely different. So right now, the plan is that registration has to be in to participate by Friday, October 30th, which is the Friday before the statewide election starts. And so that registration doesn't hold you or bind you into that number. That's just so that we know about how many voters we're expecting and which teachers we have to communicate as far as who's nominating, who's voting only, and all of that. So say you did register with 15 students and within a couple of weeks you're down to 8. That's totally understandable. If you'd like to give us a heads up, you're welcome to send us an email, or I think you'll all be on our e-blast list. If you aren't already, you can just hit reply and it goes right to me and we'll update your numbers. But we're going to be very flexible. And those numbers also kind of in the past traditionally let us look to see how many you're expecting to vote. So if you vote for a ton more or a ton fewer, we know, okay, there might be something wrong with the math or in our records. So it's mainly a guiding point for us. So we're not going to be committing you to a hard number. Does that answer your question, Carol?
Carol, I'd also comment from a teacher's perspective. I'm in the same boat. Right now, I expect that I will be Monday and Tuesday in school. Wednesday, school will be cleaned, and Thursday and Friday, I will be back in school with cohort B, cohort A in the beginning. And I may also have students fully online. So I may have like literally 3 different groups of students. And again, that may change before we actually start. So what I'm planning to do is I'm going to plan as if all of my students were remote. That way I'll have everything ready to go. And if students are in the classroom working with me, they can log into their laptops, or I can project on my smart board and do the remote lesson together. If I have students at home, they can work the remote lesson. And if I have students who are not at school on a given day, they can work it on another time. So I'm sort of doing a better safe than sorry and planning fully remote. I've also know of teachers who have allowed the entire 5th grade to vote, but only if you're putting a candidate forward, only using a small group of students to be kind of a campaign team for that candidate. And that way it's a smaller number of students that you're working with at any given time.
And one thing to add, which is kind of tangential to all of this, but kind of it made me think of it when Elaine was talking about planning for all virtual. You know, we always say, and it's clearer this year more than ever, that the toolkits are meant to be flexible and adaptable. So, you know, in this year, you know, if you need to merge 2 lessons together, or you don't have a time to do one of them, they're meant to help you help your students get the most out of the program. So please feel that freedom to be flexible with it and adapt them and change them and merge and do whatever you need to. You know your students best, and as you navigate through this fall, just do the best you can to make them all to teach what you can and make sure you do the best at what you are doing. Yeah. All right.
Before going on to the next question, I just want to add, I think I speak for all 3 of us when I say we want to do whatever we can to support you. Without you, the teachers, we can't run this program. This program doesn't exist. So if there's anything you need or you have questions about the resources after we release them, please feel free to email all 3 of us, just Brian if you want to annoy him. Everything we're doing is to try and make your lives easier, because we know that this is such a challenging time, and we want to make sure that your students get the most out of it, that you're getting the most out of it, and that we can continue to keep this program going, even if, you know, this is just how the future is. We're all doing everything online only, which hopefully we're not. Hopefully one day we go back to normal. So our next question is, are there any suggestions for how students can create their campaign videos if they're at home?
Yes, absolutely. One resource that, well, a couple of different things. We're actually getting some advice, and Elaine has been helping us out, and we're working to adapt those campaign teams, which are in lesson 14 of the toolkits, for ways that those can be done virtually, and thinking through how you can have students work together. So many teachers tell us about how they have those campaign teams working in their schools, and we've gone in for a few classroom visits where, you know, you've got a group off in the corner who's working on where their location is going to be. You've got these kids working on a speech, and it's wonderful to see all that working together. And what really stuck out when we reviewed the state's reopening plan was how they really encouraged, whether it was in person or virtual or hybrid, those opportunities for students to network and connect. And they talked about how kids need those relationships. So if you're looking for a way for kids to be able to still work with each other, even though some may be at home, some may be in the classroom, I highly recommend the campaign teams. And we'll be releasing some resources in the next few weeks about how you can make those work virtually, and dividing your students up, or as Elaine said, maybe a smaller group, a smaller cohort of your 5th grade, to each take on a different component. When it comes to recording the actual video, that's something that you'll have to think about based on what your school's regulations are. You know, we always recommend, you know, you'll see, and we'll talk tomorrow in the tips webinar, sometimes kids have groups of kids together cheering for them, or they'll have different kids give testimonials, and that just may not be possible this year. One thing I do want to recommend, and maybe Elaine, you could talk for a moment about this, is that Flipgrid could be a good option for having students record their videos at home. Do you have any thoughts on that, Elaine?
I do. First of all, it will definitely be different this year. I mean, there's no way around that. However, I wholeheartedly agree that this will be very possible through a distance, remote teaching and learning. As far as the actual filming of the videos themselves, there is work going on right now that I'm participating in to modify the campaign committees so that they can work virtually and break off into small groups to do some assignments and then come back together to share out. The actual filming, what I'm thinking in my mind is either the campaign committee will design the entire script and write the speech and make the posters and then get them all over to the candidate's house. And it might be on a cell phone. Several candidates last year filmed their videos via cell phone, and they can then be loaded to a laptop and pretty easily edited with something like iMovie or QuickTime Video. Again, it's not as complicated as it sounds. I know it can sound very overwhelming at first, but again, as a not particularly tech savvy person, that's how we worked our video for our candidate last year. If we are able to be in the classroom, then we can film in the classroom. But again, it won't be exactly the same. Kids will be distant, and we may do cheering, and we may have to do much shorter clips of filming and edit them all together rather than running the campaign video all in one session. And Flipgrid would absolutely be a possibility. I think that is something we could think about. The campaign videos only need to be from 1 to 3 minutes long. They can't, if I'm correct, can't go more than 3 minutes. So you need to be pretty concise anyway.
I'm looking forward to maybe some Brady Bunch style, a bunch of individual kids across the screen cheering for the candidates. Maybe we'll get some of that.
Absolutely. And I do want to add on, we've been doing a lot of research into Flipgrid and meeting with some teachers this summer, and I think it's a newer feature, but Flipgrid now allows you to merge videos in it. So if you wanted to do something where maybe one campaign team or maybe it's one student, says, I think so-and-so should be kid governor because, they could record it on Flipgrid, send it to the candidate or to whomever, and they can then be merged into one video on Flipgrid. They've just released a whole group of new features. And I feel like because of thinking all this through, like Elaine said, maybe you just have to record it on a cell phone. A lot of kids have done that before. I think it's such an important moment to reemphasize how critical it is to make sure your student's platform speaks for itself. And so that goes back to taking a very careful look at the worksheets and the resources in the toolkits. If you are merging lessons and adapting, I highly encourage you to look carefully at the ones towards the end, because that's what really helps the students put together that solid platform. We've had some kids who their schools just had them sit down and they recorded them right then and there, but they're the most dynamic speakers. They have the platform that is the most realistic. So it's not, while it's great because there are great opportunities for editing things and putting them all together, the key is going to be making sure their platforms are solid, actionable, realistic, and appealing to students. So even if they're all, this year, kids just sitting down at their devices, that's what kids are going to be looking for now, is what about the platform and what am I voting on?
And I was actually amazed at how creative my kids were this spring, and how technologically savvy they really are. They can figure out things really quickly because they're the tech generation.
And as one last comment on video editing for students who their parents might have iPhones, but maybe they don't have a MacBook at home, or they don't have something with video editing software. If the parent has an iPhone, iMovie comes pre-installed on it, and it's really simple. That's what I used to do a lot of our Kid Governor videos, if it's me doing it and not CTN. So it's really just drag and drop. There's royalty-free music right there for the kids to use. It's really simple. And if it's something that teachers would like a tutorial on, I think we're more than happy to provide a quick and easy how to use iMovie on a cell phone, since that might be the only option for some students. All right, so another pre-submitted question, are the resources for districts, or are there resources available for districts not using Google Drive?
Yes, that's a great question. So we went through chose to use Google Drive as the core of what we were developing, because a lot of schools are using Google Classroom. But a couple of things to keep in mind. All of the PDFs, the individualized PDFs, can be accessed as long as you can connect to the drive itself. The Google Slides presentations and the Google Slides worksheets and the Bitmoji Classrooms can all be downloaded and shared as PowerPoints. So if you aren't using Google Drive or Classroom, you can still make use of those materials. There's also Flipgrid, which doesn't rely on Google Classroom, and those resources and those reflection questions are all available through there. All right, and we're just a little past 5:15. Are there any other questions that any of our attendees have? And I don't see anything else in the chat, but anything else that you've received, Sam?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Well, with that, I just want to remind everybody about our workshops for the next few days. Tomorrow we'll be discussing tips for a successful campaign video. So if you'd like to learn more, I hope you'll come back and join us for that. On Thursday, we'll be talking about the Kid Governor program beyond the statewide election. And we'll talk about the opportunities that we offer to you and to your students in ways that you can keep the civics momentum going in your school and in your district after November. And then Friday, we have a special session called Learning from Colleagues. And this is going to be nearly entirely an open discussion. What we're going to do is invite 3 Kid Governor educators to share some of their experiences, and then ask questions, have you folks and our attendees ask questions of them. So it's a chance to hear even more from educators who are practitioners and who've been working to make the program possible. So I hope you'll join us. If you missed yesterday's webinar, it has been recorded, uploaded to YouTube, and I believe, Sam, you said it's already up on social media? Yes, it is. All right. So if you missed it, I hope you'll tune in and watch, and all of this week's webinars will be uploaded to YouTube and shared. So I do hope you'll tune in, or if you do have colleagues who might be interested in learning more, that you'll share these with them. So our question of the year is, will your student be the next Kid Governor? And I hope that you will stick with us this fall as we all go into the unknown of what this learning environment will be, and that you will choose to either vote or nominate and vote, and perhaps one of your students will be up on this screen next year filling in the 2021 question mark box. And as Jacob, Samantha, and I have all said tonight, we are here to help you. This program is not possible without you, and we have created this to make sure that it's useful, turnkey, and as easy to implement as possible. So please reach out to us if you have any questions. You can find our email addresses here, and they're all on the website under contact. And if you haven't already, please be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe to us on YouTube. We have lots of resources that are going up, and some of you may have seen Kid Governor on NBC News the last few days. Last week, one of our former cabinet members was on Fox 61. So we're going to be in the news, we're going to be on social media, and in your inbox. So hopefully you and your colleagues will be hearing all about Connecticut's Kid Governor this fall. So with that, I thank you again for all you're doing, and all you're doing as educators. We are here to support you as you head into this next school year, and please know how much we appreciate you being involved in the Connecticut's Kid Governor program. Thank you for coming tonight.